I will just sort of kick things off and as we welcome more people on Zoom and for those who are streaming on LinkedIn. My name is Michael Goldberg. I'm our executive director for the Veale Institute for Entrepreneurship at Case Western Reserve University. I'm also a professor in the business school. And speaking of business school, it's fun to welcome my Wharton classmate and friend, Monica Hooks, to our entrepreneurship speaker series. It's been a lot of fun. When Monica and I were catching up before, I was saying I've tapped into some of our Wharton has very small class, only 800 of us per class of the full-time MBA program. So lots of people to choose from our alumni base. So a few folks from our class have joined since we've been doing our speaker series over the last, I guess, 2 years. And it's great to have you here. All of our events are student moderated, and we're really thrilled that Regina, who is a Case Western Reserve University undergraduate, is a participant in our prize program. So working on entrepreneurship project of her own, is going to be our student moderator. Before I turn it over to Regina, who really sort of run the show, I wanted to welcome in Amelia Schaffner from Emory University. Amelia and I, in the world of, when I first started my new job at Case, we had actually connected, and then we saw each other in person at a conference that brings together other leaders of entrepreneurship centers. And she had mentioned, because of her proximity in Atlanta and being familiar with Monica's work. So I said, hey, let's join our session today. And actually the session, Amelia, that we saw each other at was around the ecosystem in Atlanta and the work that Emory does. So Amelia, I wanted to say thank you and welcome today. I don't know if you wanted to say a word or two about your work at Emory before we officially kick things off.
So thank you for having me. So I am the founding director of the Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at the Emory Business School. And our focus is really threefold. We focus on entrepreneurship, on early stage investing, and innovation. And it's great to be part of this conversation because Monica and I are part of a couple of groups actually where we're involved, because Atlanta is a small city despite being like a numerous city. And so there's a lot of ecosystem efforts where we cross paths frequently, actually. And it's a very supportive community. The universities are very friendly to each other within the city, and we do a lot of collaborative work. So it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Michael.
Great, thanks. And it's interesting, in the world of sports rivalries, we're Emory and Case Western Reserve, we're Division III, but we're in the same UAA sport. So we play each other in sports, and we've been looking for ways to collaborate across universities in addition to competing in sports. So it's great, Amelia, to have you here. So with that, let me turn it over to Regina, who's going to run the show. And like always, we really do want to hear, I know Regina will probably make a comments, but we want to have this be as interactive as possible. So we look forward to hearing your questions if you're here on Zoom or on LinkedIn Live. But over to you, Regina.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. So my name is Regina Sosa. I'm a third-year international business and international studies major here at Case Western Reserve University. And it is my pleasure to be here today and to help moderate this event. I will introduce our guests shortly. And after a few words from them, we will open the floor up for discussion. Please feel free to use the raise hand function, unmute yourself, or type a question in the chat. Thank you for remaining muted otherwise. Without further ado, our amazing guest received her bachelor's degree in political science from Dartmouth College and her MBA from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania. She began her career at Sony Music Entertainment, where her role ranged from product management to international marketing. In 2004, she founded Moracle, a marketing innovation agency whose mission is to connect business, media, technology, and culture. Our guest is the current executive director of Atlanta's Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative, where she is responsible for innovation policy, financial capacity building, and entrepreneurship retention and development. Please join me in welcoming Monica Dolores Hooks.
Thank you so much, Regina. And thank you, Michael, and to the whole Case Western community. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I hope that we have a fantastic conversation about entrepreneurship. And Amelia, thank you for helping to represent Atlanta and our wonderful ecosystem.
Thank you, Monica. We would like to open this session up for discussion. I have a few questions to get us started, but again, please feel free to jump in. Monica, can you start off by telling us a little bit about what motivated you to go into entrepreneurship and supporting women founders?
Well, yeah, the first part of entrepreneurship, I grew up, at a time when the city was starting to put policy in place to support entrepreneurs and small businesses. And that was under the leadership of Mayor Maynard Jackson. And that was kind of very, very progressive at the time. A city so diverse and with a very, very interesting history around culture and diversity, and now creating economic mobility for a lot of people. It's kind of in my DNA. But with regard to supporting women in entrepreneurship, I often say to my peers, I made all the mistakes that a woman could make in entrepreneurship. I left my corporate career without capital. I left without a strategy, and I left without a really focused, laser focus vision about the solution that I was trying to provide. And so that just created a lot of obstacles. I kind of went out there with my ego and bluster, and I had, so much experience that I thought that would be enough. But you really do need those three things: capital, strategy, and a focus.
So can you tell us a little bit about how those obstacles you faced leaving the corporate realm, entering entrepreneurship, have helped you advocate for women on entrepreneurship, especially those in Atlanta?
Well, sure. I mean, I've experienced it firsthand. And I think entrepreneurship is a very, very unique experience and a journey as a professional. And it's different from being in corporate America, or just in corporate life. I mean, a multinational corporate, I shouldn't say corporate America. And I think those nuances and those experiences that you have as an entrepreneur, trying to start something from nothing is very, very difficult. It's very different than being in a system where you've got support and infrastructure and frameworks and resources. So all of those, it doesn't translate easily. And I think that I've got a very unique perspective in that I experienced that difference, and I can speak to it as a lived experience. And I'm very passionate about it because it was painful during the time.
Yeah, I mean, entrepreneurship is definitely a different experience for everyone, but I am sure that your experience is really valued in the work you do to this day. Taking a step back, can you tell us a little bit about the disparities between men and women in the entrepreneurship space, specifically unique challenges women in Atlanta face? Yeah.
Sure. I think, so men and women are different. That's the biggest thing. And so we process through problems differently. We manage people differently. We prioritize things differently. And there's no right or wrong to that. We should celebrate those differences. But I will say that the broad framework of entrepreneurship has not been set up for women. So when you get into the space, you may not, for instance, have a general knowledge of finance because you didn't hear it at the dinner table. And even though you manage your household, you've never put together a P&L. And so that intimidates you, but it shouldn't, because you're already doing it and you do it in many of your experiences. And I think it can be very challenging for women in this space to say, oh, well, I've never put together a P&L, so I'm going to let that intimidate me. And I think that there are actors in this space that prey on that. But the bottom line is that as an entrepreneur and as a business professional and as a CEO, you've got to have that confidence in yourself regardless, and figure out how you can work within the system. So I could go on and on about, whether it be capital invested in women or, different programs and how they're set up and whether they're for men or women or they're gender specific. All of those things exist, but they exist in the real world. I think the biggest opportunity for women is to acknowledge the differences and to be authentic in their experience with it regardless and know that the way that women lead companies has been proven to be successful. Like there literally is data around that. I think there's a study from BCG that came out in 2018, and it says that women on average generate a return of 10% more than our male counterparts. So there, again, there's no right or wrong to it, just acknowledging the differences, knowing that may play out differently for you as a woman leader, and embracing it and having confidence in it.
Yeah, definitely. Women definitely have the power to do something big, as you say, and the conversation starts like right here talking about it. It seems like we have a question in the chat. Kimberly, if you would like to unmute yourself and ask Monica.
Hi, Monica.
Hi,
Thanks
Kimberly.
for sharing with us today. So I was thinking about you talked about the difference between being in corporate settings versus an entrepreneurship setting. So I'm going to preface this because I heard this, I think just this morning. It was Simon Sinek. I was listening to something actually. Yes, it was. That everyone who's in small business is not an entrepreneur. And entrepreneurs can be folks who are in a large multinational corporations, right? Thought process and approach and such. Yet at the same time, I was interested when you said that, you know, it's different and maybe we don't have those same skills. So what core skills that you acquired in corporate translated over when you made that transition into entrepreneurship?
The biggest skill I think from corporate that translates into entrepreneurship is the squeaky wheel skill. Ask for what you want, advocate for what you want, be loud about it. And I think that's one of the most important things for entrepreneurship, which just translates into will. But I think that's how it manifests in a corporate setting, that the squeaky wheel gets the oil, they get assignments, they get recognition, and that is a clear translation in entrepreneurship. And I think it's a foundational trait for successful CEOs.
Kind of stemming back into the corporate realm, Monica, do you think that the glass ceiling exists in entrepreneurship to the same extent that it does in the corporate realm?
Probably, but I'm going to have a different take on it. But it shouldn't matter to the success of the women in this audience because we can't allow it to. I think that the trick there is to, again, know where the obstacles are, figure out your strategy to get around them, because if you figure it out, you will likely break that ceiling. But yeah, that's probably there for sure. I mean, we certainly see it in, again, statistics like, I was laughing with a colleague about the investment of capital in women, and it's 2%, but it's been 2% for like 2,000 years. And we're like, if we can just get it above that, I mean, people have been citing that 2% for a very long time. So yeah, certainly.
Thank you. Can you speak to some of the WEI initiatives to support women entrepreneurs and break that ceiling?
Yeah, for sure. So for people in the audience that don't know about the Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative, which we call WE in Atlanta, it is an initiative that came out of the mayor's office in 2015. Centered around two principles, that women are the center of our communities, they're center of our households, center of our communities, and they're a prerequisite for strong communities. And then the second principle is that, you know, women working out of their homes is not scalable, which is how a lot of businesses start. So we want to create an initiative and an incubator that would put the resources and the framework and the infrastructure around these entrepreneurs to build their businesses and to scale. In 2018, we transferred from the city of Atlanta through the mayor's office into Invest Atlanta, which is the economic development agency for the city of Atlanta. And that's been fantastic because it's truly aligned with our mission. So the mission for the WE program is to elevate, engage, and empower entrepreneurship through women. And Invest Atlanta has a mission to make Atlanta the most economically competitive and dynamic city in the world. So we think that that's aligned because we think that women are really important in Atlanta, and that we should provide, all the framework for them to contribute to economic development and mobility. When I came on to the program, this is the unique thing, I was actually in the inaugural cohort for the program. And, at a part of my entrepreneurship journey where I was in a valley, and I really needed to kind of go back and retrace my steps. And it built so much of my experience in New York. I did not have the social capital in Atlanta professionally to launch a business. And so I felt it would be really important to be a part of this program. But I also, I have a really intimate view of it as an entrepreneur and all the things that I would have wanted to know before I jumped out of the corporate career. So I came with a very specific perspective on this and how I think I could impart some earned wisdom for entrepreneurs in Atlanta. So I instituted a 4-pillar programming curriculum. And the 4 pillars are business analysis, which is all about strategy, learning and leadership development, so that, once you learn how to be strategic about your strengths and weaknesses, you can address whatever those weaknesses are. That 2nd pillar, learning and leadership development, is really supported and reinforced by community partners and advocates that can help us with everything from startup marketing, startup finance, startup mental health, startup operations, startup legal. Because if you're trying to launch a business, you need to know a little bit about all of those things. And again, we're an incubator. So we're trying to set the foundations for women. I should note here, I should have said this at the top. Our incubator is focused on early stage startups, and that's defined by startups that are 1 to 3 years old. They've got a business model that's been proven in their first set of customers, but they do want some additional help with those foundational elements. So that once they have all those things in their wheelhouse, they can go into an accelerator and really, really scale their business. So we were talking about the 2nd pillar of learning and leadership development, which really helps to reinforce those foundations. The 3rd pillar is about strategic partnerships. One thing I've noticed with entrepreneurs, no one says a bad thing about women entrepreneurs. Like, you're never going to get a bad story about that. And I think entrepreneurship right now is a very, very in vogue and all of that. But I think that people do also have reservations about how to engage with entrepreneurs. They're like, oh, I would love to support entrepreneurship, but can I really give them like a $500,000 contract? I don't know. So that's part of the strategy of making sure we involve our community with our learning and leadership development. We've got small businesses, universities like with Emory or Georgia Tech or Georgia State. With private enterprise, people come in and do workshops, share their resources, and help develop our cohort of women. So in that strategic partnerships pillar, then we go out and execute on those learnings, right? At that point, you've got community partners who can say, I've seen the work that's being done with business A. I knew they were having an operations issue, but now that's been sorted. We've been working through it. I think they'd be really good for a pilot with UPS or something like this. So that 3rd pillar, strategic partnerships, is supposed to build on the second 2, really making sure that we prepare the women for whatever type of partnership they might need. And then that 4th pillar, funding opportunities. I think that women are not, people don't educate women about finance in a broad way, the way that we educate men. And this is a broad statement. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. I'm saying broadly. So I'm really, really passionate about women understanding all the different types of capital out there and when and how to use them. Some businesses can be bootstrapped and should never go for VC or equity investment. When you're at this stage, which is early stage startups, I'm a huge fan of microgrants. I do not think you need $100,000 to prove a thesis. I think you need 5, 10, or 15. And I think as a woman, if you do that with that constraint, when you go ask for your pre-seed or your seed or your Series A, you should ask for 10 million because you've already proven it with a very, very focused and conservative budget. I think that some businesses should really go for loans because they were able to bootstrap it, but you can't scale and hire 500 people by bootstrapping. So you should get, a loan from Invest Atlanta or access to capital for entrepreneurs to, partners, obviously, with this program. Well, Invest Atlanta is obvious, but ACE is also a partner. You should get that 1 or 2% loan. You should not use your credit card at 13, 14, or 20%. All of these things go into this part of the pillar, just breaking down how capital can be a tool, and it can be a tool that you use at different parts of your journey. And so that's an overview of the program. We do 15 businesses for 15 months historically. I actually, in 2022, am going to change that now that I've run the program for a couple of years. We will do 15 weeks of programming for 15 businesses. So the change is, instead of having one cohort every 2 years, we will have 2 cohorts every year. And we're going to start that in January of 2022. One thing I think I mentioned at the top when I talked about the thesis for the program, we're located in a historic building in downtown Atlanta, the Flatiron Building. And it's kind of like our own personal WeWork. We're on the top floor. It's an environment that really elevates women. It makes you feel like a boss when you walk in, and that's on purpose. Instead of doing, but they will always have 15 months of access to that co-working space, and access to that co-working space, I think, is just a part of their membership in the WE program. So that's WE. I'll end by saying, I love this program. I think that it is a direct descendant of people like Maynard Jackson, who put these policies in place to help diversify procurement, to diversify our pipeline. And I think Atlanta continues to benefit from that. And that's a little bit about the program.
Thank you, Monica. That was a great overview. I'm happy to hear about WE's amazing work in Atlanta. Professor Goldberg, go ahead.
Great. Thank you, Regina, for calling me. And great job moderating. This has been a lot of fun. So Monica, it's funny, you and I both, sitting among our cohort at Wharton, both kind of jet off to the private sector, and then 20 odd years later, both end up in situations where we're supporting entrepreneurship, but in your case, in a government role. In my case, it's sort of a university role. We take our experiences from the private sector and then try to assist in different ways. And I'm sort of curious and I live it because of some of the administrative challenges I think we have at a university and sort of getting things done. I think for those of us that haven't gone in to government, and I recognize that in some ways you're in a unique position, and perhaps it's not a traditional government role, and though you're supported by government, but I'm wondering if you could sort of talk about the role of government in supporting entrepreneurship, because there are some folks that might be like, hey, given the many things that government needs to be involved with, the social services, the whole host of things that healthcare government needs to do, what is government doing involved in entrepreneurship? So I'm sort of curious, particularly given your background, which was not in this realm at all, your perspective on that role in government, and has it evolved at all as you've taken this role?
Well, it's certainly evolved, for sure. So let me talk about our metrics. The WE program is measured by number of jobs created and the amount of capital invested in our entrepreneurs. So we are currently, between the past 3 cohorts, at over 630 jobs have been contributed to the economy in Atlanta. And 3.1 million has been invested in these businesses. Through, be it grants, loans, private investment. And so I think when you make that contribution to the city from an economic development lens, that is, it's significant. And I think that can be built upon. Especially, then Michael, when you talk about the Great Resignation, right, this thing, right? And so there's been a record number of women starting businesses. And I hope that I'm able to access some data on that in the near future, because my hunch is that a lot of women think they have to start these businesses for whatever reason, whether whether it's real that they have to or not, they do, because we see them starting in record numbers. So you got to support that. You got productivity and jobs development. I think that's a take on the policy from a big picture, that we should be participating in this part of policy, and that the data supports women, and then we should support that, because we're going to have bigger wins if we do that. There's another part of it in terms of the operations, which is what I think that's really the rub. And I think that's really what people talk about when they say, why is government in that? It's too much friction, it's too slow, it's too bureaucratic, it can't work. And I do live that in a very daily way with this role, and as do my entrepreneurs. I'll give a very, very specific example that everyone can relate to. My entrepreneurs that we're about to graduate in 2 weeks from this third cohort, they've never been able to work out of the WE office. That is really sad and really not cool, because that office was designed for them. But I'll tell you what, they've all continued their businesses. Not one business stopped over the past 2 years. And their statistics, the success of, one entrepreneur was on the NASDAQ billboard last month. Another entrepreneur has research from Emory, Georgia Tech, and a pilot at Kroger. They're thriving, but they couldn't use the office, and they really needed the office. And there was nothing I could do to change that, because government buildings were closed. So there's an inherent friction in terms of the tenor and the tone and the temperament of entrepreneurship, which is aggressive. It should be aggressive. You should ask for forgiveness and not permission. I believe that. And government, which has a lot of consideration for liability and for making sure that it is equitable and objective. And that's not always what entrepreneurship is. So yeah, it's certainly evolved. I still, and like in the face of that, I still advocate for the city and programs like this. Because if the city didn't do it, there are really some brilliant women out there that wouldn't get access to this information, because they didn't get it through those other more communal or social environments. They were just never exposed to it.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Monica. Let's jump over to Alex. Alex, feel free to unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Alex Weber-Balzer. I'm a double alum of CASE and the Rollins School of Public Health at Emory. I'm in the early stages of entrepreneurship. Decided in July of 2021 that that's what I wanted to pursue. And actually I've had the pleasure of sitting in on some of the calls that Ms. Schaffner's provided at Emory and some of the webinars. My question is sort of an operational. I'm not quite there. I'm in the early stages. I'm not quite ready for an application to WE yet, but I'm in Atlanta and it's on my radar. I'm a public health professional. I'm an epidemiologist. And my question is around kind of the early stages. It's related, I guess, a little bit to capital, but healthcare is attached to current jobs. And without getting into the policy and the complicated nature of that entire beast, is your organization, WE, or any other organization that you're familiar with, putting resources towards some sort of co-op programming or some sort of group programming where entrepreneurs could band together and get healthcare? I know this exists in places like the Farm Bureau and religious organizations, but I've yet to find it for entrepreneurs.
You mean to consolidate resources so that you can provide health care for your business, right?
Healthcare for myself and my employers. Yes.
Yeah. So we actually, one of our partners is the Women's Chamber of Commerce, and they have a really strong health. Well, they have a great option for healthcare. You do have to have at least 4 employees, but it is an exchange of entrepreneurs, and it's facilitated through the Georgia Chamber of Commerce and the Women's Chamber of Commerce, which is based here in Atlanta. I'd be happy to connect you with Jill Goldrich, who's the president of the Women's Chamber of Commerce. That's one of the critical things that she offers for women-owned businesses. I actually did an event with her a couple of weeks ago and met another woman there who provides health insurance for entrepreneurs and their employees, and has an exchange. And I'd be happy to try and find that and connect you with her as well. I think that this is not an unusual problem. It's something that I'd like to add to our program, because the stress of not having healthcare is very real. And I remember that as an entrepreneur. I will say, I'll give a shout out to Emory at Grady. When I was at a real valley in entrepreneurship, I got healthcare through the Grady system. You can actually go to Grady Hospital and you can sign up and you can go get all of your standard exams. Now, you can't provide it to your employees, but there are resources out there to make sure that people don't fall down while they're trying to do spectacular visionary things.
Thank you. That's really helpful. As a head of household and a sole provider for my 3 children, it's a real concern. And I know it's a concern for other women early in the entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah. I'd love to connect with you and point you in the direction of that. You also may want to sign up for, there's a group that's starting to develop, and we're going to do a panel on this on the 9th, actually. So next Thursday, it's mompreneurs, and a lot of them are single mothers, and it's been supported by one of my colleagues at Georgia Tech, Catalina Garcia, and a couple of my entrepreneurs are in there. They're all moms, and Tamara Lucas. So it may be a cool group for you to find support and access resources. I will say for the audience, that's another thing about our program that I find to be our competitive advantage, our special sauce, is that we're mobilizing a network of women, of like-minded women in entrepreneurship. And that seems to be an incredibly valuable resource.
Excellent question. Thank you so much, Alex and Monica, for that. Ilona, if you would like to unmute and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Ilona Seaman. I'm currently working, building my own entrepreneur journey, and I fit your niche. I'm 3 years in. I have a nice stable of clients. I'm looking at ways to scale up, and I have a product it's word of mouth. And what I do is, as I earn clients, they talk to others. So I'm in a good spot there. And your program sounds perfect, taking you from that niche, that little seedling, and scaling it out, which is what I'm exploring now. I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm not in Atlanta. And so my ears lit up when you mentioned your cohort that's just graduating now. They had success doing virtual. Not moving to Atlanta. I love Cleveland. So are you offering that in your cohorts coming up, or is it all in person? Because there is 2 different dynamics with an in-person group and the bonding that occurs and the support in an online group. Are you going to do a mix? Are you going to offer both? So I was hoping you could speak to that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, such a great comment. I was going to say move to Atlanta for 6 months.
That's a hard no. I'm a freeze baby, so yes, in a heartbeat, I would move to Atlanta. I love Atlanta, but family obligations.
Absolutely.
And because it's a seedling, I do have, as the prior speaker just mentioned, a steady job and a network with healthcare and so forth. The company not quite yet is ready to move to southern environments. So,
yeah.
Monica, I'm not going to invite you back if you take all of our talent from Cleveland.
I'm not going to do that. I promise. No, I love this comment, and I love everything I'm hearing from you. Don't leave your job. Don't do that, and continue to water the seedling. So, I don't have any immediate plans to take the program out of Atlanta, but I do have plans to take it out of Atlanta in the future, to scale it out of Atlanta in the future, because I think that the formula and the framework that we've developed here is something that's scalable. And I think it would complement places like Case Western in the way that we complement Emory or Georgia Tech or Georgia State. Now, because I'm not doing it in the near future, it's Iona. I hope I didn't mispronounce.
Ilona, yeah.
Ilona, thank you so much. So because I'm not doing it in the near future, it may not help you, but because Atlanta is so awesome, we do have yet another program that I think may be very appropriate for you that has become has a hybrid virtual in-person model, and that is Launchpad 2X, which is run by one of my colleagues. Her name is Christy Brown. And I would love to put you in touch with Christy. Now, her program is not an incubator, but it's not quite an accelerator either. Their tagline is Rocket Fuel for CEOs. It's woman specific. I was a part of one of their very first cohorts as well. And but I think we as a pipeline for that, but they do some really incredible work, very valuable to you. And it's very, very targeted. It's a month of work with like weekend work, like an executive MBA type of setting. And they had their most recent cohort, they had members from around the nation. So there are some options out there for you. And the last thing I will say about that comment question is thank you for that, because I believe strongly that there are more than just women in Atlanta that need this type of programming, because I think this is a very critical part of your early stage.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, absolutely keep me on your radar, because I'm growing it slow and steadily. So it's not, the time will come when it's ready to scale. So I would love to be in your inaugural virtual group.
Oh,
so keep me in mind.
I will. For members that are listening also, I mean, what I was telling Ilona, or Ilona, the program, I did get it. Okay, good. Thank you. Launchpad 2X. So it's launchpad2x.com or LP2X. I encourage you guys to, thank you so much, Amelia, to check it out. And then our program website is WeAtlanta, WEIAtlanta.com. And I encourage you to check that out too, for people that you think may be a great potential applicant for the program. We're accepting applications through December 31st. And like I say, we will announce the new cohort at the top of 2022, towards the end of January or the top of February.
Thank you. So unfortunately, we are almost out of time, but I do have one last question. Monica, how do you foresee current social and cultural movements impacting entrepreneurship and the business world at large?
Oh, Regina, thank you for asking that question. I'm happy we are able to touch on it. Social and cultural movement. I think Atlanta is a social and cultural movement in and of itself. I mean, our history is so unique in so many ways. And it's so, so I think that we're a very, very critical anchor here in the Southeast of the US. And I think that we're going to grow in influence because demographically, so many people are moving here. But I think people do move to Atlanta for social and cultural reasons. I think socially, it's a very, very pleasant place to live. And I think culturally, our history is super, super rich. Everything from Dr. King to Coca-Cola to the city too busy to hate. And that informs our entrepreneurship and our innovation and our pipeline. Atlanta is experiencing a lot of good press right now around having a diverse technology pipeline that's anchored by our historically Black colleges, like Morehouse, Spelman, Clark, Atlanta, as well as Georgia Tech, Emory, Georgia State, a really unparalleled population of intellectual talent in a pipeline. I think that then there's actually an agency that's developed out of an entrepreneur, and the agency is entitled Atlanta Influences Everything. I think that entrepreneurship is going to, I think that innovation is really going to be the dominant theme over the next decades. And I think that innovation is driven by diversity. And I think Atlanta has that in spades by the examples that I've given to you. And I think that, policy does not lead, the market leads. And even back to the point Michael and I talking about jumping into the private sector with big multinational corporations, they don't lead, innovation leads. And I just think that innovation that is driven by, that is informed by societal and cultural nuance and relevance is the innovation that will win. So I think that, yes, I think that that is what entrepreneurship is all about. And I'm really grateful and really humbled to be doing it here out of Atlanta.
Thank you. Thank you so much to everyone for an excellent discussion. Thank you to Monica. This was really wonderful. I've truly learned a lot, and I'm sure many of the audience has as well. Now I'm going to pass it over to Professor Goldberg to close the session out.
Great. Well, thanks, Regina. Monica, as you could probably attest, the greatest thing about the work that we all do is working with young people and on campus with students. So Regina is one of our star entrepreneurship students. And Regina, I know we don't know each other well, but I've heard awesome things about the work that you're doing as an entrepreneur on campus. And I'm excited to see you continue to grow. And now you're an experienced moderator. So you have that, to add to your already awesome resume. Monica, this is fun. And it is crazy that we've been out of business school for so long now and ending up in roles sort of after, as we were saying, kind of in the large multinationals and now doing this work kind of in a community. And Amelia, thank you for your partnership in today's event and sharing some of the things that you're doing in the ecosystem. And I love trading notes between Cleveland and Atlanta. And, we're not in Silicon Valley, and there's a lot that each of our cities have. And it's awesome to sort of hear. I mean, a lot of what you're doing, Monica, is what we try to do here is dot connecting. I mean, you're pulling really interesting pieces together, supporting entrepreneurs with an eye towards women as well. So I love the work that you're doing. I'm inspired by it. So thank you so much for taking the time to join today.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been such a fantastic discussion. I love talking about this stuff. I think we're changing the world. I think all of these incredible, young minds and young innovators are going to just reap so much wonderful in the future. So thank you guys for having me here and letting me be a part of it.
Great. And I think this does it. As we move into the exam season and the holidays, I think this is our last program with the Institute. We've got a whole bunch of stuff kind of in the spring, so check our website. Wishing everybody a happy holiday season and see you all in the new year. So thank you again.